Hey, everybody, welcome to another KPIs podcast. I am extremely excited for today. We've been on this journey about burnout. Talked with Hannah Spicer the other week, and then I thought, you know what, I need to have somebody in that has a very unique take on this. So I'm excited to have Bob Fair with me this morning, who's a licensed professional counselor in the state of Pennsylvania. Bob, thanks so much for joining me today.
I am really excited to talk about this. It's a topic that, well, we're both familiar with, but it's also very common. I think it's probably more common than people realize that they might actually be experiencing that, but don't really have the language to know what it is. So it's just really good to be being able to address this morning with you, Kurt. Looking forward to it.
Why don't you share a little bit about why you kind of came into this experience with burnout?
Yeah, so as we're going to get into, there's different forms of burnout. I've been able to maybe come up with three. There could be more, but I'm going to be talking about three with you today. And then maybe some offshoots, kind of maybe sister-like offshoots of burnout, which I'm going to call flame out and rust out. I'm so familiar with these, not just from being a counselor, but because I've experienced all three of these in my life. And so I have that experience of being able to describe it, not just in a more clinical way, but personally. So just know that I've lived it, and now I'm trying really hard to not repeat that. I think I know what to do to stay out of burnout, but it's definitely been a very important part of my life, which we'll also go into a little bit why burnout could end up being a very positive experience. That's the thing that I want everyone to leave with. It is a really challenging squeeze. That's the way I think about it, but it can squeeze you into a new opportunity, some changes that you might make to your person, which are really, really good and can affect you in your work or maybe a new trajectory for work or even in your relationships. That's what we want. And so this is not necessarily a negative thing. It's just really painful to go through.
Let's define it. We talked through a definition, and I liked what you kind of came up with, and that was a syndrome characterized by acute depletion of energy and motivation regarding those things in a person's life that previously brought them meaning and purpose, such as relationships and work. I'm going to read it again because that's a long
Yes.
one, and I think
Yeah,
it's important.
yes.
It's worth repeating.
Yes.
So a syndrome, right, that is characterized by acute depletion of energy and motivation regarding those things in a person's life that previously brought them meaning and purpose, that could be things such as relationships and work. I was going to say, so yeah, there's several words in there that are really good. I think it's a great definition, but I think the second word, syndrome, can we go into that a little bit?
Yeah, we'll break that out a little bit because that was a mouthful. It's a big chunk of how to get your head around that. And that's because burnout, it involves a lot of things, which is essentially what a syndrome is. It's just something that you're experiencing that affects a lot of parts of you. So let's say you have a bad burn on your arm. It's not really a syndrome because it's just, well, you have this problem in your arm. It hurts and it's going to heal, maybe leave a scar, but it's sort of localized to that part of your arm. But with a syndrome, you're talking about something affecting your thinking, your emotions, what you do, how you relate to people. It's kind of an all-encompassing swampy place. Because it's a syndrome, that means it's really hard to work through. It's extremely difficult to work through burnout, and you can also be possibly getting depressed in the midst of it. I think in some of the burnout that I've experienced, that was like a twin sister experience. Getting depressed and getting depressed is no fun thing. And so now you're burned out and depressed. And so that's what I mean by a syndrome. It just swamp-like, it's like that. It's really hard to get out of it, or just like it's like being in quicksand, and you feel like it's pulling you down. I think probably a lot of people would describe it like that.
I think it's a good thing to note too, because we oftentimes, I'm burnout because of work, and we give it that one thing, or I'm burnout because of this thing in my family, right? It's usually like there's a key driving force, right, that you're feeling, but it is also those other things because this isn't going exactly how you would like it. Or it might be, while work is 90% of it and there's only 10% of it, if you're pulling on all those other things, it's just enough that you just start to hit that cycle. So I really like that you kind of said this is across multiple elements of a person's life, and that you might try to tackle that one thing, but it is really, you have to think about it as a much larger, broader thing that you're going to try to figure out what's going on.
Yep, that's it. So that's what I'm hoping people will take. And then the next piece of it is what it's characterized by. So what you're looking for in your life is how depleted are you in your work, or how depleted are you in whatever else that you're trying to work through in your life, and notice that. And if you're really finding that you're struggling just to have general energy to do the work that you're doing, but it's not so much that you're depressed, you just can't find the energy in your body anymore to like pursue whatever that is, that you want to look for. That I would say would be a sign that you're entering into this place. So you're looking for the depletion of energy, and your motivation is another key factor. And usually if you're feeling tired, obviously we're not going to be very motivated to do much. So those kind of go hand in hand. So we're looking for that experience if that's popping up for you. Pay attention to your energy. That's one of the key things to notice. And for you, you also are saying that you had burnout. Not that I'm going to be interviewing you, but I didn't know that you had. I knew that there were other things going on, but I wasn't sure that I would have thought about it as burnout for you. But it was, now that I think about it, for you. How does that resonate for you?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because it was like just in some of what you were describing, it was that I remember times in the midst of this, and I won't go into all the details here, but it was like I would get an email and you would think the world was ending because I was just like the emotional toll and energy it was going to take to respond to that well. And for those that don't know, I was a pastor. So this was when I was a pastor. So like
Yeah.
some things that were like, just do these things, but there's a lot of emotion tied into that and all that stuff. I would get this email and I would like just walk away from the computer because I was like, I can't deal with this right now. And like starting to be like, that's not normal. That's not okay that an email throws you off that much. But yeah, like, so you saying that was good. And it was in all facets of my life that like I wasn't in control of. I have these patterns that happened and I was just exhausted. It felt like quicksand. It took so much energy to do anything. And when you're in that spot, right? And it feels like it's going to take that much energy. You're already burnt out. You don't have that much energy to give. So like you get even more overwhelmed by thinking about the amount of energy you try to have to muster to do that simple task. It is a very messy, sick place it's just overwhelming.
Yeah, so you're describing it very well. I mean, I'd say that my experience is very similar. And you were talking about, I think you mentioned fatigue. That's a good piece of this too. Talking about energy depletion and motivation. I would say now, using the word fatigue, there's physical fatigue and there's emotional fatigue. And I would say that they're different, even though they may feel similar, and that the emotional fatigue is harder than the physical fatigue because you might still get a good night's sleep and still feel emotional fatigue. So I would say just the physical fatigue is just what you get after a good workout. But that doesn't mean you're emotionally fatigued. I'd say emotional fatigue is related to when you're giving out so much, giving, and caring and caring and caring, and outputting and outputting and outputting with very little in, so that now you're being asked to respond to someone, care for someone in some way, and you just don't have anything left to give that person. There can be no more caring happening for you. That's what I'm talking about with emotional fatigue. So that's going to be an element of this burnout. It's just not being physically tired, but you're going to feel physically tired with emotional fatigue. But I like, separating it out, because when we're talking about what to do, we're targeting emotional fatigue primarily. Okay, so that would be a distinction I'd like to make.
I was going to say, so as we think about kind of the workplace, what is interesting is you have people that are very invested. And generally, when you have people very invested, they're pretty good workers. But what I've noticed is when they're invested, right? Emotions are invested in that too. Then you have the people who we would say aren't as invested and are not emotionally invested. And there's probably some good to that. How do you balance that between being fully invested in your job, but not letting it burn you out?
Yeah, I think it's maybe more unique to the person. I'm not sure what would be causing the person to pull away from being completely invested. because, as you said, they may have experienced a burnout before and are holding back, or they're currently in the process of burning out, or they're not enjoying their job, or maybe something else. I think it's a matter of talking to the person. And then if the person is really invested in their work, that may not be healthy either, believe it or not, because what if they're totally invested in their work to get away from problems at home? And that is their distraction. Or they find their meaning and purpose in their work rather than something else that is probably more, let's say, healthy, investing in your relationships primarily, rather than seeing your work as your definition of who you are as a person. We don't want to be defined by our work. That's going to be really important, but want to be differentiated in how we see ourselves. And that's essentially means that there's bookends where we can see where we stop and where something else starts. And so the opposite of differentiation would be something like merged. So if I'm so invested in and merged in my work, um, and let's just say the work, the business goes out of business, let's say, but that's my self-worth is grounded in that. I'm going to be crushed by that. And this is what we do not want. So we're looking for some kind of a balance place where we're investing in our work and we want to put out a good product because it's good to do, but there is a limit to it. And I have personal limits. I have personal boundaries, and I'm caring for that boundary. And so it's going to be something like that. It's going to be unique to the person. Everyone is so unique.
So we talked about kind of burnout coming in different forms, right? We talked about relational burnout. You hinted at kind of caregiver burnout, which is when you're caring for somebody so much. We just started talking on occupational burnout. We kind of defined as like there's demands, right? There's always demands in your occupation, right? And then there's the expectations of others, coworkers, superiors, right? And then you just get to the point where it kind of exceeds the person's ability to meet those needs, which is why I think people get crushed by micromanagers. It feels like it's never enough. It's just never enough.
Maybe just one last little point on the occupational side. So what makes this really tricky also is, let's say you have the micromanager or you're being micromanaged. It might not necessarily lead to burnout if maybe that's the first time you've experienced that. But let's say you were micromanaged as a child or in some other relationships, and that was really, really hard for you and you never quite figured that out. Now you're in a new situation where it's your occupation. You have so much riding on it, your income, et cetera, and now you're being micromanaged. You're going to be re-experiencing something that you experienced before. And that is going to be driving you down into the pit. Okay, so it's really the re-experiencing of it. So you can ask yourself if this micromanaging, is this the first time I've experienced this? Now let's look at the flame out and the burnout. So we've talked about relational burnout, which would be that's the marriage that you're in, and the person that you're married to is just non-compliant to something that they really need to change. And you've been trying and so patient, and they just are not budging. Eventually, you're going to hit a point where I love you, but I can't do this anymore. So that would be the relational burnout one. And then the caregiver burnout. Let's say you're a therapist, or let's say you're a person who is taking care of a sick parent. That would be the one that happened to me. It's a slow drop in the person's vitality, and eventually they pass. And you're trying to care for them the whole time, and you're naturally a caregiver. And so you can experience that caregiver burnout. I experienced it with both my parents when I lost both my parents, and of course the occupational one. Now, all of this creates the emotional swamp place, and we have to still try to figure out how to survive. So we have certain coping strategies that we use to push through surviving. But not every coping strategy that we have is going to be, let's say, in the category of what is emotionally healthy.
Yeah.
So then this is where the flame out one comes in. So what the person's looking to do is trying to manage the negative emotion that they're feeling in the burnout by blocking it some way or numbing out some way. And so then the person may pursue maybe another relationship if they're married outside of their marriage to try to give them some, effervescence, some bubbly, something that feels the opposite of that horrible thing. And then they commit a moral failure there, which wrecks their relationship and could also affect their work. So that's what I'm saying is flame out. Some kind of a moral failure, but it's coming out of this emotional blocking place. And then there's the rust out one. Rust out is just a miserable place. I've experienced that myself also. I've had things in my life that I wanted so badly to happen, and I tried so hard to accomplish. And then I just got to the point where it's not going to happen. You should just give up. Just give up, let it go, walk away. You're done. Ain't going to happen. But I'm not walking away happily. I'm walking away miserable. Okay. That's the rust out. So let's say somebody has a certain career, but then they get so rusted out from it that they just go and they move to Alaska or something and, work on a fishing boat or something. They just can't even think about doing any kind of business anymore. It's over. So that would be the rust out. So it's just a burnout that was never treated, and it went too long. They never pulled out of it, and it left them in that rusted place.
That rust out speaks well. You have these things that you engage in. Some might call it gift for something, right? Whatever that is. It could be for caring for people. It could be hosting people. It could be all this stuff. And you sometimes get these ideas of what it could become, and you pursue those things, and then it just starts to wear you out because it's not materializing. And maybe this gift is a gift, but it isn't a gift that needs to take up all your time and all that stuff. And there's I think that happens a lot, but it puts a pressure on you, and it's like, is that really what that gift and that thing that I do really well is for? Or is it, and that's kind of realigning those priorities, or does it need to be something else? And how do I manage that correctly?
Yeah. So that's a good point, Kurt. We have gifts, and when we want to use our gifts, and then how do we mediate that using of that gift? And has the using of that gift then kind of become this place where we're now defined by the gift that we have, and the success of the using of the gift defines who we are, and then we find ourselves on a treadmill, and that's the burnout treadmill. And how do we get off of that? How do we use our gifts, but yet not be burned out by our gifts? The occupational burnout for me was, happened in different occupations because I've done a lot of different things, but definitely happened to me as a youth pastor. And so I really wanted to make a difference with these kids, these wonderful kids, so passionate about it. But ministry, for some of those who out there who are listening, who have done ministry, you'll know this, it's very messy. Well, actually, any kind of thing that you do is very messy. Any kind of occupation is very messy when you're talking about dealing with people. People are messy. Okay? Work is messy. Finances are messy. Everything is messy. Well, my youth group kids, also very messy. Beautiful, messy kids. And I thought that I could fix that. If I was just cool enough, groovy enough, played the guitar, the best songs well enough, if I could come up with the best messages, that they would change. And that was a really bad idea. And then at some point, one of the kids, who was one of those kids who were really getting it. So this is the thing that really got me, that I didn't recover from, is there was one student who was angel-like student and just loved, never missed a meeting, loved everything that I said. I guess that really kind of built me up.
This is it. This is what I'm doing this for. They get it. Yes.
Yeah. And then, of course, she gets sick and she gets cancer and she passes away while, in high school. And, of course, everything that I was trying to do with these kids, they were so demoralized because everybody looked up to her. And I did. We were all so demoralized. The youth group, I don't think the youth group ever recovered. I certainly didn't. And then it was just, that youth group just plummeted in terms of, vitality of it. And so that was a extremely painful experience that, I think in some ways I may still not have recovered from. I can still feel it, a lot of the pain of that. So,
in that, well, I wanted to pause you there because you said a word that was interesting to me. You wanted to fix, right? I have noticed that in my life. When you see something that you think you can fix, right? You go after it. People may not even ask you to fix it, but you see the need, because generally I think we've been made to care, right? Like there are people that shut it down for whatever reason, but you're made to care, and it could be caring about people, caring about things. you want to be a fixer, all of those different things. I love that you said that, because like we see the thing, we see the need, we see the potential fix for it, we think we can fix it, and it causes us to go down this path to fix something that maybe we weren't actually asked to fix. Can you talk about that a little bit more, about how you've seen that play out in your life and others, about that need to fix and how that can, I think, quickly lead us to burnout?
Yeah, this is such a common landmine that I think probably all of us who care will step on at some point. And it's so understandable, because if you care and you see there's a problem, maybe you're sharp enough or gifted enough to be able to see solutions. Well, you want to give them the solutions. Here you go. Just do this.
Why wouldn't they want my solution, right?
Generally, I find that people don't want solutions until they ask for a solution. If they ask for help, then please, by all means, exercise your wonderful gifts and knowledge to fix something. Now, if you're a manager in your occupation, this is a little bit tricky. We're going to have to give you a little bit of help with this, because part of your job would be you're sort of needing to fix, so you may not feel like you have much of a room to move around in this. But I'll work my way over to that. But let's just take generally why fixing is a bad idea. Let's take the case of marriage. If you try and fix your spouse, it's going to be a very bad day for you. And there's a couple reasons for this. What do spouses want? Well, they want an ally. They want somebody that's going to walk with them and be with them in the thing. Probably a lot of workers want their managers to kind of be an ally, now that I think about it. But you see this definitely in marriage. And so then here I am, I see that my wife is struggling with something, and I've got a great idea as a therapist, and I know how to fix her. By the way, that's a really bad idea with my wife. She'll throw something at me, like I'll have to duck. But anyway, but the reason for that is because she wants me to be with her in the thing. But also, if I'm fixing, it means I think I know what the solution is. So that means that I'm up here and she's down here. That's how it's going to feel. You're the one with the solution, and I'm down here in this misery, and you're going to try to fix me, and you're not going to come down into the thing with me. But that is essentially what people need. That's what spouses are looking for. Maybe even people with managers over them looking for that also, that kind of support. So we can fix, though, if we're invited to fix. You can also ask for permission, but, you can ask your spouse, is this a good time? I think I see something happening. But I don't want to just throw this at you, because, I don't want you to be feeling like I'm fixing you, because I know that would be awful. So we want to stay away from that one. That's going to really drive misery for you. And it'll be very confusing and frustrating, too, for the person who wants to fix. So, because they have the ideas, what are you supposed to do with them? Anyway, this is a way to get around it, by asking for permission. Is this a good time? I see some things, are you in a place where you could receive that? That might be okay to do in a work environment. Just because you're the manager doesn't mean that you can't exercise kindness and still get the job done. Why not ask the person if this is a good time? What's wrong with that? And they're going to want to, if you care for your people that work under you, they're going to want to do more. There's going to be some loyalty that will develop, or at least a connection, a kinship there that will form. And that will really help the business, as long as it all stays in balance.
Love
So
it.
that's the deal with fixing. Yeah.
I want to talk about kind of the common thread that we're kind of moving into.
Yes.
What, relational burnout, occupational burnout, caregiver burnout, depressed mood, all have these in common: emotional fatigue.
Yeah. So what is emotional fatigue? And I think I probably described that a little bit. Maybe what we can do is contrast that with what the opposite of that would be, which would be emotional health. If I'm experiencing emotional fatigue, what should I do? And, what is it that I'm trying to get out of, or what should I be looking towards? So definitely the opposite of that would be something like pursuing emotional health, being emotionally healthy. But that doesn't mean you're not going to experience emotional fatigue at times. I think everybody is going to. If you care, you're going to get tired out, especially if you're a parent. This is going to be unavoidable. You're going to experience emotional fatigue with your children all over the place, especially when they're young, and then especially when they're teenagers.
Or when you have teenagers and young ones, and the 2-year-old's kicking you at night, and the 14-year-old's hitting you at 8 in the morning with whatever thing that doesn't really matter in your mind, right? Yes, that's, yep.
That's probably
Oh, did you hit a nerve? Sorry, sorry.
right. So, yeah. So, this isn't something that we're going to be able to avoid. But what we can work towards is being emotionally healthy. So, what is that? Let me talk about that. Here's my idea about what emotionally healthy is. I think it just comes down to awareness. And I'm talking about self-awareness and other awareness. So self-awareness would be at any point I am in touch with what I might be thinking, what the emotions might be that I'm feeling, what I'm doing. Human beings have this strange skill that maybe other things that exist don't have. There's this thing called metacognition. All that means is there's me, and then I have this ability to kind of go outside of myself and see myself. And this is what we want. We want to be able to not be so in ourselves that we can't step out of ourselves and see us. We have to be able to be mindful. That's a great word everybody uses these days. If we can be mindful of at any given point what thoughts we're having that are popping into our heads. And you don't have to go with every thought that pops in your head, by the way. You can think about what you're thinking about and see if that's going to take you somewhere. I like to talk about rabbit holes. There's the rabbit holes inside. The rabbit hole is that place that Alice went down into and led to finding queens that want to lop off people's heads and stuff. Well, that's a lot of our thoughts are like that. We have these rabbit holes that we can go down. Stay out of rabbit holes. Don't go down the rabbit hole. And the way to not go down is to be aware that you are about to go down into the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole is a thought pattern, or like a rumination. Stay away from ruminating. Easier said than done. But we practice emotional health. So we practice noticing what we're thinking, and we practice interrupting that and moving out of that. And then also what we're feeling in any given moment is really important to pay attention to. Also, the more I can notice what I'm feeling, get the sense of it, not get swamped in it, but notice it, the more likely I am to be able to have that emotion, especially if it's painful or negative, move around so that my emotion becomes more like a stream rather than a cistern. We want our emotions moving. We want them moving somewhere. We don't want a cistern where I'm just plopped down in the thing, just sitting there. That's not the purpose of emotion. That's not going to be emotionally healthy. We want to notice it, then we want to name what the emotion is, and then we want to be able to share it with someone somewhere. That's what emotional health looks like. And then to be self-aware of my behaviors, what I'm doing. If I'm not aware of what I'm doing, I'm just going to do the thing. And then I'm going to find myself in trouble. So I'm not aware of what I'm doing. So then I just do the thing. I drink too much wine. I just do the thing. I'm not aware of the thing. I'm just doing the thing. And so this is dangerous. So that's the self-awareness piece. So emotionally healthy is about increasing your self-awareness. And it is a practice. I try to practice this every morning so that I can show up for people as a therapist better, but just to be better myself and not to burn out as a therapist, as a caregiver. So there's the self-awareness, and then there's the other awareness. So what's that? So that just means I have a sense of how what I'm saying or doing is landing with you, let's say, as a person I'm interacting with. I'm talking to you, but I'm also trying to pay attention to how this is landing and what might be happening internally for you emotionally. And I have a sense of that. If I'm completely offline, I'm just walking around and talking to people without any idea of how it's impacting them. I mean, I'm just going to be kind of like a bull in a china shop, actually, and just crashing into people and then, blaming them maybe because I don't have much self-awareness or other awareness. And so when I'm self-aware and other aware, I'll be self-aware of my emotional fatigue and then and the thoughts that I'm having in my emotional fatigue or the behaviors that I'm doing in my emotional fatigue. And I'm going to start to work on that. So herein lies the way out. You think of a burnout like a tunnel and then there's light at the end. How are we going to get to that light?
Yep.
And that the process is through growing your emotionally healthy, which has to do with awareness. It has to do with some other things too, but I would say that's probably the most important one. Sometimes people will go on a sabbatical or they'll just take off or take a long vacation, whatever it is that they can do, or quit, but they don't do the mindfulness work. They just rest, which is a good thing. You will get some juice back if you rest. That's for sure. But what's going to happen is you're going to carry the patterns that led to the burnout you're going to take them with you. And so it's bad news for the person who just thought, well, I'm just going to go be a shrimp boat captain in Louisiana. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be a stockbroker anymore. I'm just going to do that. But bad news is you're just going to carry those traits with you. And then you can recreate the problem and be burned out as a shrimp boat captain or whatever it is. And so because you don't have the awareness piece. So that's why I kind of put that one at the top.
No, that's good, because that's that thing is we work for the weekend, right? Like there's people like, if I just get through, I'll work for the weekend, and then eventually that's not enough, right? And it's like, I'm going to work for the vacation, the 2 to 3 week vacation, and then the pattern is all of a sudden you need that 2 to 3 week vacation or a week vacation, whatever it is. You need that vacation. All of a sudden you need that not once a year, you need it twice a year. Then you need it 3 times a year. So that's like a flag to anybody listening. If all of a sudden you see yourself keep needing the same amount of vacation time more often, there's probably a pattern in your life that something's going on that's causing these things. And that's what really, I think, kicked some of this off. Is I had a friend that it's like, he's working his business, he's working hard, but the time between when he needed off keeps getting shorter because he's just like burnt out and on a thin line. That won't work. That will not keep you emotionally healthy. You need to have the self-awareness to see and figure out what those patterns are that are causing that, to try to fix it. Because even if he gives up his business, right? Even if he gives up his business and does something else, could be 6 months, could be a year, depending on what that new business is he goes into, or he just works for somebody else, it will pop up again, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good thing to think about regarding marriage too, because a lot of people will think, well, this isn't working, so I'm gonna trade him or her in for the latest model, and don't realize that there was a pattern in there in the relationship that was creating the problem, or a pattern within the person also, or in the relationship. There's patterns. And then the person doesn't have the self-awareness. And so they go in and they, go out of that marriage and go into a new one. And they don't realize they have a higher chance of divorcing in the second marriage. The percentages are higher. If it works the same, then your likelihood of skipping out of that job is going to be higher. And then you're going to be really in bad shape because you're going to be so unhappy and confused about what to do. And, I thought I was exercising my gifts and my passions, and my life is just a mess. And you can see it's not that far off before you can rust out, kind of give up in that state. So we don't want that. We don't want that one. And it's not necessary. It's so unfortunate. It didn't have to go that way, which maybe brings us to what to do then if you're noticing this energy depletion and the things that brought meaning and purpose in your life, or you're not really, caring about that much anymore. Now what do we do? So we focus on energy for a second, energy management, certainly sleep hygiene is going to be a piece of this. We need that, even though I was talking about the awareness being the top of the pyramid. You can have awareness, but if you're just so tired and you're not sleeping, so we need to have good sleep hygiene, and there's help for that. That's a manageable thing. Your sleep will get worse as you age, but we have to manage it, and that's okay. We can manage it. So I do. There's ways to do that you can find easily using ChatGPT or whatever it is. Just go in there. It will give you good information. So there's sleep. Your diet is important. If we're more burning out, we're probably going to eat poorly. We're going to eat heavy calorie, heavy fat foods. Then we're going to create new problems for ourselves, and our cholesterol is going to go up and all of this stuff. So yeah, problems tend to create more problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is why this is a syndrome that we're talking about. It's quite a mess. So we have sleep, we have diet, we have exercise. So we want to be getting the exercise. But then I mentioned the awareness piece. You can't get awareness from exercise or sleep. That is a unique animal. And to grow self-awareness, I suppose you can do this on your own. If you have a good guide, maybe a good book, like one of the books I was going to recommend is this one. This is The Spiritual Healthy Leader. A good friend of mine just wrote this. Well, this would be for people who would maybe define themselves a little more in the Christian community. But what it's going to do is it's going to help the person recognize what those patterns are, or help the person grow their awareness of self. That's the strength of that book. But that's not the only material that's out there for this. You can find lots of material. Also, working with a therapist would be enormously helpful in terms of growing your self-awareness. I've been in therapy multiple times myself, and it's been a very rich and very difficult experience. It's not cheap, but it's worth it. If you find yourself with the right fit, with the right person, it could be life changing. And so, or a coach, career coach, anything like that. The main thing is don't isolate. Okay. When you're feeling this, do not like, this is just on me. I'm going to hide it. I'm not going to talk to anybody. Bad idea. Don't do it. Okay. You're going to fall into the swamp even more. You're going to be gulping swamp water. Okay. And it's inevitable. Don't do it. And so reach out to somebody, your doc. That's a good place to start as your primary care physician, because you could be experiencing some clinical depression at the same time. So we're going to get that ruled out. But anyway, start talking to someone, your spouse, or if it's not safe to talk to your spouse, if you have a best friend, but your primary care physician. There's a good place to start.
Yeah, and I'll add, like, counseling, not cheap, but helps you with a foundation and a framework. And then one of the cool things is if you end up in that place again, because I've reached out to you again, you already have somebody that you know and established a relationship with. And then it's really, hey, do you have time? Do you have an appointment that we can make? You don't start from scratch. So I'll say this about, I think, good counselors. You said to me very early on, my goal is to work myself out of a job. And I have taken that to anybody else that looks for counseling. If like, I think we're going to be meeting for the next 19 years, maybe not great. We want to get you to a place with whatever this specific issue is, could be multiple issues, to get you to a place where you're functional. And then, yes, check the box. There's probably more boxes to check, but we dealt with one. Those other things will come up and then we come back to it. So like, first of all, props to you. Thank you for that. But I think it's a great thing of like, let's deal with this thing. There'll be more. And I've reached out again and we've had meetings about different things that have come up, but we had that relationship. So it was easy to say, hey, this stuff's going on. Can you fit me in? Right? It's not like, oh, I got to go find somebody and I got to go vet them. And you have that, you got to establish that relationship, and then it becomes easier inevitably when things pop up.
That's really good. And it will be more likely for you to reach out because that relationship is there, and less likely to isolate because you have the relationship. So that's a really smart thing to do. And usually, if you're in a corporate America, usually there's pretty good behavioral health plans that you can draw on so that you can perhaps use your insurance to talk to someone. But even a coach, a career coach, or just a life coach could be just somebody to keep you accountable. Maybe not in a boot camp sort of way, but just somebody that, hey, we talked about this last week. What kind of progress are you making? You're not making any. That's okay. Well, let's just see what's blocking it. Let's work at that. And then now you're working through your tunnel, your swamp, but you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're not alone in it, and you're walking with someone. That's the whole thing. Don't walk through this life alone. Don't walk through this life with all of the hard things by yourself. That's the worst place for a person.
So I want to go back to kind of where we started, because I think it's a good point to end here.
Yeah.
Is that you'd said burnout can lead to positive growth
Yes.
and change. And we know this. When we go through hard things, they can take us out, but if we actually choose to work on those hard things, we generally come out the other side wiser, with more tools to help the next time those come along. So you said it earlier, sucks when you're in it. It is the worst. And it feels like you're never going to get out. But I can say, and I've been through some things, right? You have to look back and go, man, I don't want it to happen again. I don't wish that on anybody. But what I gained from that experience that helps me potentially help others and realize those things, that I wouldn't change, right? I'm a better person because of the things that I went through. So talk about that a little bit, just like how that can lead to positive growth and change.
Yeah, I guess I can just give my own example in my life. So I mentioned the burnout as a youth pastor. But one of the things I realized was, well, I'm actually kind of good when I take the kids on the ski trip, and then there's that one person, they're very sad and their parents are divorcing, whatever it is. And I found that I was pretty good at actually talking to the person one-on-one. And so I'm in my 40s at this point as a youth pastor, and I'm thinking, wow, I don't know how much longer I can like chase all these squirrely seventh graders around, and get hit with pies and stuff, maybe I should look into counseling. And so that really difficult experience, it squeezed me into looking into another opportunity. And so I did end up pursuing a counseling degree. Obviously, I'm talking to you as a counselor now. But then there was more growth to happen because now I'm thinking unconsciously, of course, oh, good, I'm good at something. I can fix people in something that I'm better at. And so then I realized, that was a really bad idea, trying to now fix people as a therapist. And it ended up squeezing me into getting my own therapy. I would not have done therapy if I didn't crash and burn as a therapist. And that turned out to be an enormously helpful and challenging experience. As we talked about, therapy can be. It's really hard and really good. But then what it ended up doing is it started to open me up as a therapist. And then, kind of one thing led to another. And I ended up kind of moving into the more specific realm of marriage counseling, where there was a particular model of marriage counseling that I ended up really falling in love with, which is called emotionally focused therapy, which I do even to this day. So kind of one thing squeezed me into the next thing, squeezed me into the next thing, squeezed me into the next thing. And, there may be some more squeezes coming. I don't know, but it's okay if it happens because I'm just in such a different place now. I'm not saying I'm impervious to not, getting in the swamp, but
Mhm.
it doesn't scare me. It's not going to be a problem for me if I don't mean to sound prideful or something like that, but I kind of know what to do. Maybe that is hubris or something, but
No, I mean, you've been squeezed enough, and right, like what we were just setting up is you get squeezed enough that you hopefully learn something each time. Could be something small, could be something big.
yes,
That hopefully when those things come, you hope you have the things you need to deal with them. And it's like, it's not going to be fun, but like, I am more prepared than I was last time, and it doesn't scare me to death. I have tools to start to see it's coming and know to not isolate and to reach out early to start to deal with this before I end up really deep in thick swamp, right? It's easier
exactly.
to get out of the swamp when you're a step or two in versus a mile in
There
and
you go.
it's dark and foggy and all that stuff.
And I would say each one of those squeezes, I learned a little bit more about myself than I did before. So that's moving me more into the emotionally healthy realm because I'm defining emotional health as awareness. So that's what ended up happening for me. I didn't end up kind of experiencing too much rust out, um, maybe a little bit, but it did kind of get me there. And I'm so grateful for that. Like I hated a lot of the stuff that I went through, but I feel really I'm so grateful for it. And I love what I do. How many people can say that? Like I eventually made it. I found my way after being battered around like a pinball in a pinball machine. Like that's what my life was like. And then I landed somewhere and it can be really hard sometimes, but I wouldn't do anything else. I can't believe that I get to do what I do. I'm so fortunate, honestly, and it's lucrative and I love it. And I love working with couples, but I was in my 50s when I figured this out. So I guess I'm kind of a late bloomer, but there's hope for you late bloomers out there, for you folks who just feel like, I don't think I'm ever going to figure this out. You will. If you follow this path of self-discovery, you absolutely will. Just start it. It's painful and rocky. You'll just stub your toe on the rocks lots of times. You'll get lost. Just keep walking. Remember this conversation and you will find your way. Absolutely. So just word of encouragement to everyone. So this burnout thing isn't necessarily a negative. It's certainly when you're in the midst of it, but it doesn't have to be. But you don't have to be afraid of this.
That's a great way to end this podcast. So, Bob, share a little bit about you. How do people get in touch with you? A little bit about your counseling and your therapy.
So I'm in a private practice. So you can see the website that I have, robertfairlpc.com. How can people get in touch with me? Well, my name is, it's just my email address, robertfair@gmail.com. I'm not able to take on any new cases right now myself, so that might be a bummer if somebody was like, yeah, I think I could maybe work with him. I'm sorry about that part of it. But I could refer you to someone who could help you. Feel free to email me and I will get back to you. I will get back to everyone who emails me. It might not
Yes.
be in the moment, but I absolutely will get back to you. So I'll try to help in any way that I can.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Bob, thank you so much for joining me
Yes.
today. I appreciate it. This was excellent and really hope that it helps other people. So, thanks again for spending a bunch of time with me this morning.
You're very welcome, Kurt. Okay. We'll do it again.